Welcome to the Expert Witness Podcast. I'm your host, David Smith, and I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Ediuska Laurens today, who will be speaking with us. Dr. Laurens has harnessed the magic of science and the boundless wisdom of industry to champion patient safety by ensuring that medical innovations bring healing and not harm. As an entrepreneur, innovator, and holder of 2 patents, she brings expertise in medical device product development, regulation, and quality. Founder of Genius Shield, a regulatory and quality compliance solutions company that de-risks and shields cutting-edge medical technologies, accelerating their safety and efficacy to the global market. Genius Shield proudly holds the women-owned small business certification and stands as an esteemed partner of J-Lab's Resource Hub, the prestigious Johnson & Johnson incubator. Dr. Laurens brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the realm of medical innovations. Having spent nearly a decade at the Fortune 500 medical firm Stryker, she led a global R&D team in the development of cranial maxillofacial implants from concept to global commercialization. Her pursuit of knowledge led her to conduct doctoral research in biomaterials at the renowned Cleveland Clinic Foundation and be a prolific author of scientific publications. Her contributions have earned her prestigious accolades, including a Forbes feature, the Stryker Innovation Patent Award in 2017, and the Cleveland State University Women in STEM Award in 2020. As an invited participant of the 2020 United Nations Women and Girls in Science Assembly, she stands at the forefront of driving positive change in the industry. Having left her native Venezuela, she holds degrees in aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, and a doctorate in biomedical engineering. Her left and right brain are constantly in harmonious battle. When she is not launching genius medical solutions, you may find her practicing yoga, meditation, capoeira, or traveling the world to attend Grand Slam tennis tournaments. Dr. Laurens, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. I am very, very excited to be here today.
Wonderful. All right, so let's jump right in. The first thing that I always like to ask people is, how did you get introduced to expert witness work? It's not a very common career choice. You don't hear kids talking about it in elementary school. So I'm always curious, how were you introduced to it and how did you get into this field of work?
That's right. Well, I was one of those people who had no clue about the existence of expert witnesses, until a conversation with one of my very good attorney friends, and he opened my eyes. He said, Ediuska, with your unique expertise, you would make a brilliant expert witness. And I chuckled and said, I agree. But then I asked, what exactly is an expert witness? And he explained, and I became super curious. I started doing my own research, and the more I learned, the more intrigued I became, and I felt like it was a perfect fit for me. So I started reaching out to more attorney friends, seeking insights, and I even took the expert witness training with Seek. Are you familiar with them? Is SEAK, Seek? Have you ever
Absolutely.
heard of them? Yes,
Yep,
right?
very familiar with them.
Yeah.
They're not a sponsor of the podcast, but they come up in almost every episode.
Man, yes. And it was really great, given my initial lack of knowledge, it really provided me with an understanding of what the profession entails, from expert reports to crafting a CV for the purpose. So it was very beneficial for me. And that's kind of, that's how I stumble into this fascinating world of expert witness.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It always seems to be something like that. Somebody has to really introduce you to it.
Right, right.
Otherwise, you just don't really know that it exists.
Yes, sadly, because it's a very, very nice um, concentration, especially for people who like with our background.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you got into expert witness work, were there any barriers or obstacles that you had to overcome, or and did the cases come slowly, or have you been in high demand from day one?
Well, I think the main barrier, which may not be unique to me, but generally applicable, is landing your first case. You know, for me, the process was gradual for sure, and it took me about a year to secure my first case. You know, when you're new to this arena, that first case must align so perfectly with your expertise in order to be retained. At least that was my experience, you know, and when I had a match, I quickly provided value and insights to the attorney that he wasn't even aware of during our intro call, and that's what led, you know, to my retention. And during that waiting for a case window, what I did is that I invested in trainings and joined as I mentioned, with Seek and joined their directory, which unfortunately didn't yield many conversations with attorneys for me. I know that Dr. Esteemed, who was here in your podcast, really likes it, and he gets a lot of cases from it. But you know, so perhaps it's good for MDs, but not so much for experts like me. And to be honest, I initially held back from actively promoting myself as an expert witness beyond the Seek directory because of the cautionary advice for experts about being on social media. This is what I learned in one of my Seek trainings, and I had recently launched an online presence for my consulting business, and I was uncertain about the boundaries there. And you know, my perspective on this has evolved, and so it's completely different. I'm okay with that, but I did hold back a little bit at the beginning, and so maybe that's why it also took me a year. I'm not sure, but ultimately, the most effective avenue for me to acquire more cases was joining the Expert Institute. I've found their platform incredibly valuable and would recommend it to anyone starting anew with a similar background. Although I've heard it might not be as beneficial for MDs, that's what Dr. Steen says. But my experience has been overwhelmingly positive. And just to clarify, I'm not being compensated in any way to promote the Expert Institute. I genuinely believe it's an excellent platform. The process is remarkably simple. You know, I receive an email notification when there's a brief from a case to review. Then I log in to my dashboard to accept or decline. If I accept, then I answer a few questions. The attorneys review my responses and profile. And if they want to learn more, there's a 15-minute phone call conversation. And after that, they inform me whether or not I've been retained. And so I truly appreciate the platform's user friendliness and transparency there.
Yeah, that's great. We've had good experiences with the Expert Institute as well.
Yes, yes, I really like it.
All
So,
right, very good. And that does seem to be a common barrier is just getting that first case or maybe even the first couple cases. And once
right.
it's like the attorneys, I guess what one attorney told me when I was first starting out, and I
Mhm.
worked in a company where there were other experts doing expert work.
Mhm.
And they said, from our perspective, why would you hire the apprentice when you can hire the master?
Right,
Which
right,
is probably the perspective that a lot of them have. And so
right,
getting that
right,
first case or two under your belt really does make a
right.
difference.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and I think that supports what I was saying. I think that it needs to be such a perfect match with your expertise. You know, so many, and at least for me, I have I have the biomaterials side, the biomedical engineering, and then the FDA. And so, and this, all of this really came together
Hmm.
in that case, that they all needed each other. And so I think that that was like, I knew there wasn't going to be anyone like me to be able to help with this case. So I think you're right. If I were them, I would also prepare the master. And so that's why I think for that, the caveat is that very first case, and it needs to be such a good, perfect match for it to become a retention. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you share with us the, something about the types of cases that you commonly work on? Without sharing any confidential information, obviously, but can you give us an example of something that would call for your particular expertise?
Sure. Well, with a master's and doctorate in biomedical engineering, specializing in biomaterials, and an extensive experience in medical device product development, regulation, and quality, I primarily handle cases related to medical device litigations and personal injury and wrongful death. And within this type of cases, I specialize on medical devices and biologics, and medical devices product development, which includes design, manufacturing, commercialization, and medical devices FDA regulation and quality compliance, which includes quality management systems. And in medical device litigations, the focus is typically on medical device defects and recalls, which is directly tied to compliance with FDA regulations, like adequacy of warnings and allegations of product defects. And in personal injury and wrongful death cases, I deal with situations where families have been profoundly impacted by tragic deaths or severe injuries resulting from medical devices. And I have noticed that my expertise in FDA regulations and quality really adds significant value, even when attorneys may not initially recognize the importance. Regulatory compliance is crucial in most medical product litigation cases because it governs the process through which these devices enter the market and are monitored under post-market surveillance requirements. And so for instance, I have encountered cases where patients suffered complications from devices that were improperly used, leading to injury, including multiple surgeries. And manufacturers are required to adhere to labeling requirements, for instance, and detailing the conditions under which the device is intended to be used safely and effectively. And so by analyzing the adequacy of the device's indications for use and labeling requirements, I can, number one, assess if the manufacturer complied with the FDA requirements, including proper instructions for use, warning, cautions, etc. And I'm just like very much focusing on labeling. There's like so many other things like risks, and everything is all around quality and risk. And then number two, comparing those indications for use with the patient's medical profile and the treatment received have allowed me to find evidence of devices unsafely used on patients. And then in other cases involving clinical trials, for instance, I have discovered instances where patients should not have been included at all in a clinical trial due to their medical history and conditions conflicting with the device's testing criteria and indications for use. And then this non-compliance with clinical trial procedures resulted in permanent injuries to these patients. So those are some examples without, naming the specific cases and names. And so.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It seems like there's a lot of similarities between the medical devices that you work with and the, you know, most often heavy equipment that we work with
Hmm.
a lot. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, labeling and warnings and reducing risk,
Right, right.
very important in the design process and so often overlooked or is looked at more as a secondary consideration, at least
Absolutely,
in our
absolutely.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And once again, I feel like um, people think that the regulation or regulatory framework comes at the very end, but it's from the moment that these devices are conceptualized, right? That you like they are under this umbrella of design controls to be able to output something that is considered safe and effective for patients. And this is, it's really the heart of everything. So.
Absolutely. Right. So when you look at the types of cases that you've done, do you find that most of them are local or do you work nationwide? Is that typical for someone with your particular expertise?
Yeah, I operate nationwide as medical devices, along with food and drugs, are governed by Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, and federal laws are rules that apply throughout the United States. And that is an exciting aspect of my work. I've handled cases from California to Wyoming, Pennsylvania to Massachusetts, and everywhere in between. So the diversity of locations adds a dynamic element as well to my practice and just keeps things interesting. So
Absolutely. There's probably also not a lot of people all across the nation that have your particular expertise. So,
that's right. That's what I hear.
all right. So tell me a little bit, among all the different things that you do and that you have done and that you can do, why do you do expert witness work? What do you enjoy
Mhm.
about it?
As an expert witness, I find this work incredibly intellectually stimulating and deeply meaningful. I get the opportunity to apply my breadth of knowledge and experience all the way from engineering and biomaterials to medical device product development, FDA regulation, and quality. And it has afforded me a fresh perspective on medical device post-market surveillance, allowing me to delve deeper into this very critical aspect of medical device product development. So it makes me a better medical device expert. But truly beyond the intellectual satisfaction, it allows me to apply my expertise and experience to contribute to the pursuit of justice, which is a fundamental aspect of our legal system. And by meticulously analyzing evidence and upholding the highest professional standards, I strive to provide objective and impartial testimony that assists the court in reaching a fair and just decision.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that on both aspects. So
Mm,
in our practice, we've found that doing the expert witness work really helps us be better at designing products.
right.
And
Yes,
designing products really helps us be better at the expert witness work.
absolutely, absolutely. I find myself in that position as well.
Yeah,
So it's really, really exciting.
very good. So if you were going to give someone who'd just been retained on their first case one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So much, but to be more concise, I think the most important would be to establish clarity and organization right from the outset, gather and correct categorize all data and documents shared with you and discuss them comprehensively during your initial meeting with the attorneys to clarify expectations and focus areas. It's not unusual for attorneys, at least that has been my experience, for attorneys to initially be taken aback by the volume of files they provided, only to later, specify that they only want particular areas to be reviewed. Conversely, I've worked with some attorneys that prefer, look at everything, examine everything because they are aware that they don't know what they don't know. And so, this process is very important for identifying any additional information needed, particularly during the discovery phase. And, so ensure that you're clear on the case's current phase, whether it's pre-suit or in discovery. I think it's super important to align communication channels with the attorneys early on, prioritizing phone calls and video conference because, pretty much everything is discoverable. Which brings me to get familiar with Federal Rules of Civil Procedure Rule 26. That's in your Bible. And ensure that your CV is crafted to withstand cross-examination. I think that's very important. And I would say also to make sure that your retainer contract is robust and comprehensive, protecting both parties' interests and outlining expectations clearly from the outset. And I think there's a lot much more that I could say, but I think those would be without overwhelming anybody. That would be my advice for somebody going into their first case.
Yeah, absolutely. That's setting clear expectations at the beginning and understanding exactly what your role is very important and can save lots of headaches later on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I agree with that. That is good advice. So, what do you find makes a good expert or helps the expert to be more persuasive as they're trying to explain complicated scientific principles
Yes.
to the attorneys or to the court or to the jury?
Yeah, and I would say, which I mean, it's something I found in my industry anyway, but it's stick to the facts. I always say the data does not lie, and apply appropriate procedures and methodologies to analyze those facts. I think it's very important what I call de-jargon information. In my case, both the engineering and the regulatory complexities. This is something that I'm passionate about even within my own industry, because without simplification, understanding becomes virtually inaccessible. So you want to be understood. You want to demonstrate that you can translate the complexities of your expertise and your discoveries into plain English. You do not want your jurors rejecting your opinion because they could not understand them, or because they could not understand your reasons for them. And I heard this before and I use it now, that a confused mind says no or rejects. And so, you do not want to also burden your attorney with having to take the time in court to translate your information into plain English. So I believe by communicating clearly and effectively, you will be more persuasive, believable, credible, more likable, just, the whole package. And so
Absolutely. I've never heard it phrased that way, de-jargoning the information, but I really like that. That rings true.
Yes,
There's so much jargon that a lot of times when you're involved in it every day, you don't even realize that it's jargon.
exactly.
So
Exactly. And once again, it's like it makes it inaccessible. The information is inaccessible and complicated. So we want to be able to simplify and just be understood. Because once again, a confused mind says no, rejects, right? So
Absolutely. Very good. I like that.
mm,
So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we find that most experts would like to be involved in more cases. Um, what have you found to be the most effective marketing technique or the best way to get new cases?
yes, I have that sentiment for sure because I love this so much. But as I mentioned earlier, the Expert Institute has truly optimized my approach. And also, I think that finding not the how, but the who can do this marketing for you is so much more effective. And I love the team, Expert Communications. Again, I'm not being paid to promote the Expert Communications team, but they're great. Meredith and her mother. And so, um, and collaborating with fellow expert witnesses have been invaluable for me, and it's precisely how I found my way onto your podcast.
Uh-huh.
um, and personally, one of my goals this year is to attend more conference where legal professionals gather, so I could potentially share my expertise and gain more insights into the legal world. And I don't know, do you have any favorite conferences that you attend, David?
So I've found that in each state, they typically have a defense organization and a plaintiff organization, and
Okay.
they both have a conference, at least one conference each year in each state. And so depending on where you want to do the work, you can go to those
Mhm,
conferences. So we have offices in Utah and Idaho, and so
mhm,
we've been involved with both of those in the past. And then they also do it on the national level too. They have like the National Trial Lawyer Association
mhm,
and the Defense Research Institute, or DRI.
mhm. Oh, great,
Both been
great.
very, very good.
Yeah. Do you have those are your favorite ones? Or
So we haven't done the national ones
mhm.
personally. I haven't done those personally, but the state ones we've been to and have found
Okay.
those to be good networking opportunities.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll go down to Idaho and
Yeah.
no, that's
So
great tip. Thank you for sharing
yeah.
that.
So for you, Utah particularly is kind of a hub for medical device manufacturing. And so there's a lot of attorneys with that are
Yeah.
involved in those types of cases in Utah.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
no, thank you for that. I'll take a note of that because that's one of my goals for this year. So,
all right.
and so, yeah, maybe we'll manage to meet at one of these conferences in person.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be great. All right, so this is maybe switching gears a little bit, but in addition to your expert work, I understand you also do a fair amount of public speaking. Can you
Mm.
tell us a little bit about how you got into that and how you do that?
Mhm. Well, you know, people just started reaching out to me to participate in panels and speak at tech events, particularly those focused on women in tech.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my very first speaking engagement was thanks to Matthew Snyder, who I believe he was involved with the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineering, the ISPE, and he asked me to join their yearly Women in Pharma panel. And I think, from there, opportunities naturally flowed in. And, I believe that my active presence on LinkedIn played a role. It allows people to become familiar with my expertise, particularly in developing medical device innovations and regulatory compliance. And I have been invited to lecturer on medical devices at Columbia University's Department of Biomedical Engineering, which led to other panelist opportunities at Harlem Biospace. Also spoken at various events, including CheckTech, FemTech, SwissNext, which is Switzerland's hub for research and innovation, and the Maryland Tech Council, among others. So speaking engagements are something I truly enjoy, as they allow me to share my knowledge on a large scale, and it also serves as a great marketing tool.
All right. So what types of audiences do you typically have at these places where you're speaking? Are they medical students, or doctors, or are they lawyers, or somewhere in between? What types of people are you normally speaking to?
Well, my audience is typically in the medical device innovation space, and that will cover everyone that you just mentioned, because that could be biomedical engineer, not even, it could be chemical, whatever, a student at a university working on a medical solution, from those that are every day in the OR, like the surgeons, the nurses, understand what the issues are for certain clinical applications, and they come up with ideas, all the way to just regular citizens. Their families are suffering from a disease, and they have certain specialty, and they come up with a solution. So it's really broad. But I call it's the medical device innovation space. So wherever that takes place, at a university, or J Labs, which is Johnson & Johnson's incubator. So those are the places where this happens. And I have not yet had the opportunity to speak at attorneys conferences, which is why I mentioned that one of my goals is to attend more of those, so I can get invited, hopefully, to speak. And so if you are an attorney out there listening to this and need an amazing speaker, please reach out. But yes, that's how I would describe my audience for speaking.
All right, very good. And do you feel like the public speaking has helped the expert witness aspect of your work? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. Public speaking has many powerful benefits for experts, such as, it just helps establishing your authority, facilitates networking, you're enhancing your communication skills, expanding influence, educating others, keeping them up to date with what's going on in the field. And it's just a very powerful marketing and branding effort, and so through a speaking engagement, experts can showcase their knowledge, and connect to potential clients, and just contribute to the growth of the industry, while building your personal brand and staying current with the advancements, the progress and advancements in your field. So I think there's no losing spot, it's all gaining.
It sounds like that's something that you would recommend to any expert.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the importance of building your own brand as an expert is, I think, an understated part of marketing and really being good at this type of work.
Yes, absolutely. I highly recommend it. Doing speaking engagements for experts, and for all the reasons that I just outlined. So
Absolutely. Very good. So if you could go back, is adding expert witness work as a service you provide something you would do again?
absolutely, without a doubt. Professionally engaging in expert witness work not only intellectually stimulates me, as I mentioned before, but also resonates with my desires to contribute to the pursuit of justice. And I view it as yet another avenue through which I can contribute to making the world a better place.
Very good. All right, so a final question, how can attorneys find you if they want to get a hold of you?
Yes, and so I have my website, which is www.geniusshield.io. And I can also be reached out via email, which is my first name, Ediuska. You would probably have to spell that out, David, somewhere in the podcast.
We'll have a link. We'll have a link.
Yes, we have a link or something. So Ediuska at geniusshield.io. And definitely you can find me in LinkedIn as Ediuska Laurens.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. So Dr. Laurens, thank you so much for being here. It's been wonderful talking with you. Appreciate all of your ideas and insights. I know I've learned a lot and I've appreciated getting to know you and talking with you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was a really great investment of my time. I appreciated all of your questions, and I'm hoping that this is helpful for those who are trying to get into the field, or even those who are already in it with a similar background as mine. And yeah, hopefully is beneficial to those that get in touch with your podcast. Thank you again for the invite.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pleasure to have you here. And again, thank you.
All right.